Rovers are home. There's been two subplots: the TV coverage and the travel. Bizarrely, like as opposed to the football itself, which has been sensational. So let's do the subplots first. Let's bury the lead again, in keeping with the theme of the show. The subplots were that the travel had somehow. Rovers were pissed off about it. Skopje were pissed off about it. And in the end, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, I mean, SHAMROCK ROVERS had to fly out and were initially scheduled to come home via Sheahan Airport. We heard all about the Skopje statement last week. Stephen Bradley held his counsel until after this game, but he went into the Zoom press conference certainly with something to say about the frustration about trying to get charter flights home. Because you have to get charter flights to these games. From third qualifying round on, you have to go via charter under UEFA rules. So he was frustrated that for some reason the Irish clubs couldn't get slots via Dublin. Whereas I think he was less frustrated by that than the fact that Ludogorets could fly in and out of Dublin and CSKA Sofia could fly in and out of Dublin for their game against Pats. But as it turns out, that tweet is by Mark Lynch, who's the media officer at SHAMROCK Rovers. They flew back via Shannon and it was too foggy to land. So Stephen Bradley had manifested sufficiently in our press conference to land in Dublin around 5 or 6 this morning. So you'll say all's well that ends well, but the problem is they now have to get to Budapest next week and they have to fly via charter. And again, everything is booked last minute. Like, I mean, these games, it is a bit of a logistical nightmare as it is because you only learn your opponent. Well, okay, Rovers have 8 days notice this time. Sometimes you only have 5 or 6. But they'll have to find their way to Budapest, hopefully via Dublin.
Maybe their owner can stick on a plane for them. You know,
maybe. I mean,
at this stage, it's probably worth it.
I mean, maybe. I mean, I did there was one of the comments on my piece was just like, could they not just get someone to fly them out of Baldoyle or something? Yeah, well, maybe there will be, but it's a strange. Like, it's just been completely chaotic. I mean, Pats had probably the biggest nightmare obviously to fly via Knock to Sofia, and then we're stranded there for 2 days, and which led to the non-playing, should we say, because there's question marks over that over the Shelbourne game, which is a nightmare for Shelbourne as well. So it's been so disruptive. It's been, football is interesting in the sense that it's a window into all kinds of worlds, and this summer has been window into the world of Dublin Airport.
Travel chaos is general all over the world at the moment. Let's talk about the football. It's a massive, important moment for Rovers and for Bradley to be able to get to this point. Nothing's done that they haven't done before just yet, and Ferencváros stand in the way from a place in the Europa League. So maybe can you quantify where this stands in terms of the context of other previous results? Is this as good as we've seen in the last decade?
I don't think so. I think there's more in that Rovers team. I think that they haven't, Ludogorets aside, they haven't really faced top quality. They've still been good teams, and that's not to take away from Rovers' achievements. I think there's more in Rovers, to be honest. They were really fairly comfortable. Like, there were a few nervy moments across the 2 legs against Skopje, but they were pretty commanding, and they did so without, Roberto Lopez is injured. Jack Byrne has hardly kicked a ball. Mandreu was sold at the start of this run. So I think there's more in them. I think we've seen more impressive results, one-off results. I think Pats probably have had the result of the summer so far, but there's just more to come from Rovers. They have achieved something that they hadn't achieved before, in the sense they are now guaranteed the Conference League group stages, and they have effective free hit against Ferencváros to get into the Europa League. And it's real, you could call it vindication for Stephen Bradley and everyone at Rovers who backed him. I mean, he took over in 2016. He was initially on an interim basis, and he presented to the board, I think with Stephen McPhail, this is the direction we need to go in. And the board just turned around and said, okay, go and do it. We'll back you. And they did back him. Like, there were rocky moments, particularly at the start. They were heavily beaten by Dundalk, and there was jeers and doubt among the crowd, but they stuck with him, and they got close. They obviously won the league, and they kind of dominated domestically and made the most of Dundalk's collapse, and got close last year. And it's interesting, Bradley used the phrase let themselves down against Flora Tallinn in the Conference League playoff last year. They just didn't really perform away from home, and I know that Bradley has said that externally people were guilty of underrating Flora Tallinn, but Rovers didn't hit their levels in that game, and they were way too open. So that was they've been learning. I think they've learned from the mistakes of the past. Like, they were a lot more solid against Skopje last night, and one significant achievement, but they're not going to stop at the Conference League.
The progress for Irish football isn't going to come from one golden generation who all decide to stick together and play for a League of Ireland team and take them into the Champions League group stages. It's going to come in slow, steady increments, where one year you get beaten by Flora Tallinn, and then the next year you qualify for the group stages. And I don't know, maybe maybe they can dream about qualifying from those group stages, but it's unlikely straight off the bat that that's going to happen, that there is a massive learning curve, a steep difference between European football and all the travel bullshit that goes with it. So this is progress. It comes slowly and hard won, and it's not very glamorous a lot of time.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, to get it, Rovers have had to, build one of the best squads I think you've ever seen in the League of Ireland. Like, I mean, they have an embarrassment of riches domestically. Their average age is over 30, which is rare in the League of Ireland. I think the average age of the league is something like 24. So they're far more experienced. The squad is built for Europe, and they've needed that depth because they've missed Lopez, they've missed Byrne, they've sold Mandreo, Chris McCann missed last night. But they need that depth, and now they've achieved it. I do think like the base, and I think it'll become Rovers' like minimum expectation of themselves in the next couple of years, that if you win the league in Ireland, get a place in the Conference League group stages. Because if you win the first round of the Champions League, through a very complex system the UEFA have set up, you get all these second chances. You drop out of the Champions League into the Europa League, and then you drop out of that into the Conference League, so it's well set up. So I do think that this should be a minimum expectation of the Irish champions to achieve what Rovers have done. That's obviously not take away from what they have done. It's always hardest to be the first in that regard, but I think that would certainly be the minimum expectation going forward that Rovers have of themselves.
And this is the incentive, isn't it, for a manager like Stephen Bradley to not take an offer in League One, or for players to not take an offer in League One. This is just on a plane that's completely different to what you can get at a similar level football-wise in England, these European nights. And like, unfortunately or fortunately, this is what the entire season is going to be defined by when it comes to attracting talent and trying to persuade some of your younger talent to actually stay at the club.
Yeah, well, I mean, the previous managers who have led Irish teams to group stages, Michael O'Neill and Stephen Kenny, both went on to manage internationally. I mean, Stephen Bradley should definitely have those ambitions down the line. I think he's only 37. Like, he's very, very young, and like, he's made mistakes. Absolutely. I mean, maybe they were too open in Flora Tallinn last year, but he has learned. I think. I mean, you can see that they've learned from previous mistakes and they've developed as a result. And it feels like, well, when you tell the story of Bradley at Rovers, there'll be a couple of almost eureka moments. One will be picking Gavin Bazunu as a 16-year-old to save that penalty against Cork. Another was going to the three at the back system, which they did after a European game in 2019. It might have been Bran, but I'm just doing that off the top of my head, so I'm not so sure. But that's been huge for them, because that's given them a very obvious identity, and it's made recruitment much easier, because now they're recruiting players with a specific place in the team in mind. I mean, this is like all the best teams now have a very clear identity, and when they recruit players, they know exactly what positions they want, what types of players they want, and it's a very defined ask of them. It's why Manchester United have been such a basket case as opposed to, say, Man City and Liverpool. They know what they're recruiting for, whereas Man United don't. Rovers do as well. I mean, they've recruited really well. Other clubs in Ireland will say, well, it's easy to recruit well when you've their budget compared to everyone else. But, I mean, Dundalk had a bigger budget than Rovers last year and, blew up, So, I think that change to three at the back, that came in 2019 after a European game. I think that was significant on this road to the Conference League. Possibly better.
People are going to be very excited about this question about coefficient and all that, but like, what is the possible upshot of them going into the Conference League rather than the Europa League? Obviously, with an easier group and potential for qualifying from a group, does that have long-term implications in a positive sense for next season for Irish clubs? Well,
I mean, the higher you get the coefficient, the better you be rated. I mean, like, the champions path now is such that it's effective seeding. So I mean, there's one of the good things that UEFA have introduced in the last few years is A, the Conference League, and B, the Champions path, by which the champions are kept. Champions of all the national leagues are kept in separate brackets, and as a result, it's easier to qualify. It is easier to qualify for things like the group stages. So a rising tide will lift all boats. So the higher the coefficient means the more likely that the Irish sides will get slightly better draws down the line, and that should be the aim. I mean, I was among the people who kind of reacted with a level of derision to the FAI's strategic plan, saying we want to be in the top 30 coefficient by 2025, I think it is, which seems kind of crazy because there were 40 at the time, and it's hard to break through that glass ceiling, as it were. I don't think they'll get there, but in fairness, they're making more progress than I thought. I mean, I think it's up to 38 now, and with if Pass can get through, they have a good chance of maybe climbing to 37, 36, which having been at 42 only last year, maybe the year before, would be great progress.
Frank Faros, we're calling it a free hit. We're saying that we would expect the technically superior Eastern European team to, win 3-0 over the two legs. That's what would have happened in the 80s and 90s. What chance do they have?
I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I haven't really got a chance to take a good look at Ferencváros yet. They'll definitely be underdogs. I think they'll find it more difficult. One of the advantages Rovers have had, like all the Irish sides so far, is the fact that they've been well battle-hardened going into these ties against sides that haven't started the domestic league, like Skopje. Ludogorets were only a couple of games in. I'm not sure about the Hibernians. They were kind of no good anyway. But I mean, they'll definitely be underdogs against Ferencváros. I mean, my expectation would be that they would go out and go into the Conference League. But, you know, they're due. I mean, what Rovers have done so far, they've been confident and pretty dominant in doing so. They're due a bit of a surprise. So maybe Ferencváros.
Ferencváros have played one game in the league so far this season, so there's still a window here for us to jimmy through and go. I presume that game's going to be on TV, right?
You'd have to hope so. I mean, the line is that like RT will follow the champions in the Premier competition, being the Champions League, and then after they go out, then they'll have a look around for what else is on. Pats against CSKA Sofia is on Thursday.
That was the line this week. I'm not sure. Was it? Did we all know that was the line previously? Had that been?
Well,
and why is it? Why are we just like, oh, that's grand? Why does that like?
Yeah, I mean, I was unaware of the Premier competition bit. Maybe I was wrong to have misinterpreted that from that being the well expounded policy last year, but that is certainly the policy that is this year. I sense some skepticism on your part.
I'm very skeptical about this. Like, we keep getting the ratings figures. It's all about the ratings. It's like it's not it really isn't about ratings when you're taking taxpayers' money. The other thing is, Virgin aren't doing any of this. Virgin don't get paid by the government to be our national broadcaster. Virgin have to make money from advertising, which RT also do. The fact that they don't collect the licence fee or haven't managed to convince everybody that we should have a better system for collecting the licence fee is on RTE, I would argue. An Post do a bad job of it. The ads that threaten you don't seem to convince people that they need to pay. That thing doesn't seem to work. But they still get loads of money from the taxpayer to cover sport, and they funnel a load of that money to rugby, and they funnel a load of that money to GAA, and they don't funnel as much of that money to the FAI for whatever reason. Like I would say they pay way more money in rights fees for rugby and for GAA than they do for soccer. I could be wrong about that. Publish the figures and we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
But more than likely, they're paying more for the GAA rights and the rugby rights for the Six Nations and for the URC than they are for football. So that's them giving money to the sport. That's the government giving RTE money, who then distribute the money as they see fit. And then they don't cover the biggest game, the biggest sporting event in Ireland this week, after the All-Ireland final last weekend, was the match last night. Is there any debate about that?
I don't think so. I think it's an outstanding achievement by Rovers. The promise is much more.
But nobody knows about it.
But nobody knows about it. There was a slight Streisand effect in the sense that there was so many people talking about the lack of coverage that Rovers did say we got a record number of LOI TV streams.
Good night for LOI TV.
It was a good night for it because, and like, I mean, they had to jump through hoops to get it. I mean, we had the scene of like Justin Ferjad's dad was ringing the Skopje sporting director the morning of the game. Like, this is for one of the biggest games of the year. Is this game going to be on Albanian TV so we can stream it? And ultimately, Rovers made another bid for the rights to stream the game. Late in the day, got it, and I think it has proved profitable on LOI TV, which is great. But that doesn't appeal to the casual viewer who doesn't really know a whole lot about LOI TV. It needs to be on regular TV. And the argument is always that, you know, the endless bloody argument is that broadcasters will argue you need investment and grow the league and make the stadiums look better, and then it's a better broadcast product. Whereas then people will argue, well, if you broadcast it, then that'll bring the investment. So I don't know where that endlessly circular argument ends, but the European game should be seen as separate of that. I mean, they've got a prestige of their own. They're a major commercial and marketing opportunity for the league, and they should be all on TV, in my opinion. I mean, obviously RT get all of the criticism, really. I would be critical of the commercial broadcasters for not stepping in. Like, I mean, Virgin Media would show the group stages. I don't know why they can't really step up and show the qualifiers. But then, you know, okay, RT have a public interest remit, but they obviously see that, they obviously feel they're showing enough. I mean, Declan McBennett, who's the head of RT Sport, was engaging pretty well with our League of Ireland fans on Twitter yesterday, I have to say. He was making the point that, 18 League of Ireland games plus cup games plus the European ties that have been shown so far, there's more Irish football on than ever before. Is that not enough for you? And
no,
actually
it's not.
The answer is no.
It's not enough. When the bar is so low, and the thing is, right, when you compare that with the number of club matches and GAA matches that are going to be on, It's just not the same. And it's clear that there is more interest in showing GAA and more interest in showing rugby than there is. Why did we show the URC final between the two South African teams? I haven't seen the viewership figures for that game.
I assume because contractually you have to.
But like, so what? You know,
Yeah.
stick it on News Now.
Yeah.
Because they ended up moving the hurling quarterfinals for that game. Remember that weekend?
But the argument will be that game will get as many, if not more, viewers than the Standard League hurling game.
Two South African
Loads
teams.
arguments that they moved. It was actually an argument from within the Sunday game on air that he had suggested that they had played a 1 o'clock quarter final because of the URC final.
But
that
true.
was certainly the suggestion I got.
It was
from
true
watching
though.
this.
It was all moved
So
because.
I can understand. I assume. Look, I mean, I'm not privy to these conversations. I don't know.
But you make your contracts. You sign those contracts knowing what's going to happen. And if you are interested in making the league a better product, I also hold the FAI somewhat accountable for this. If you're going to give the international rights to a broadcaster, make them do more. You can have these if you do this and
in
this.
In fairness, what's tricky for the FAI is that a lot of the international games are sold centrally through UEFA now. So, I mean, it's harder to say, here, RT take the Nations League games, but you have to show X number of League of Ireland games. That's tricky because it's sold via UEFA. So the FAI have kind of lost that leverage, as it were. I think they could definitely do things around, like the URC demands you buy URC rights. I think you have to commit to 30 minutes build up before and however minutes reaction afterwards. That would definitely be worth bringing in from an FAI point of view. Just one thing that, like, obviously RT seems to have some kind of commercial remit as well. I'd love some kind of clarity on like what that is versus public interest, because what confuses me is that they'll show Champions League games on a Tuesday night. So they'll show Liverpool, or I was going to say Man United, but not Man United anymore. Who's there? Chelsea or whoever. But then, like, I mean, that's obviously a commercial money spinner. There's no actually technical public interest in that, unless you can argue maybe like public interest is Caoimhín Kelleher, but it's not, basically. So, and like, why not leave that to the commercial broadcaster and Virgin Media, and then reallocate those resources into genuine public interest in screening and investing in Irish soccer? I don't know, I've never really seen that argument teased out.
There was a brilliant piece in the Examiner that Paul Farrell from Virgin made the point that they did this remarkable deal, which was the first time ever, kind of, you know, across the aisle, the DUP and Sinn Féin coming together, Virgin and RTE joining together to get the Six Nations and keep it on free to air. And his argument was, as soon as that happened, RTE took the money they saved and then bought the URC rights with it, instead of like doing something else with it. It's like, what? We just saved you a load of money and now you're just competing against us for other rights or whatever. It might have been the Champions League. I can't remember what it was, where they spent the money, but it seems remarkable. It seems remarkable that you can spend taxpayers' money on buying stuff that other people will spend for you because you want to, as opposed to because it's for the good of the country.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of this?
Obviously, I mean, Declan McBennett gave that interview to Johnny Ward and Dan McDonnell on their podcast LOI Central last year. It was very good. Like, I listened back to it yesterday just because I thought this was going to come up. And he was making the point that, like, the group head of sports should always be, you know, the moment that group head of sports says allow something else to go somewhere else, based because they're commercial, etc. Sorry, I'm tying myself up in knots because I'm kind of forgetting what he said. But basically, that they have to bid for these things. He was making the point around the Lions or I think was on this channel, and then the RT bid for as well. But he says there's a public interest in that, and because of the Irish people involved, and the group head of sport has to.
But it was already free somewhere else.
Has to be involved, yeah.
So why would you waste your resources? But it's already available to the audience. And what you're doing is you're splitting that audience, as opposed to then taking that money and spending it on something else that the audience can't get, like other sports that need help, like athletics or basketball or golf or whatever it is. That, like, as the national broadcaster, it's there's supposed to be a remit to help the. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the only point of RTE is to make money. They're very bad at that because they've lost loads of money, like over the last decade. So I don't know. It's I disagree with that. I think that doesn't hold water. It doesn't have any logic. Your point about the Champions League, when the Champions League was on 2 nights on Virgin, then RTE had all this extra money that they could have spent on other things. They could have invested that in the League of Ireland. If you look, for example, what TG Carr did with it, I mean, we're labouring the point here, but TG Carr took the league, the League Sunday. Those matches used to never be on TV. When we were kids, do you ever remember watching a Gaelic football match, a league match on TV, apart from maybe the semi-finals and the final? They weren't on week on week. TG Carr came, put the league on, and everybody's like, league's really good. These are good matches. They turned it into something by showing it week in, week out, year in, year out. And then they started showing club matches. And then when Setanta started showing them on Saturday nights, and suddenly Saturday nights in the leagues became this really big thing, and Dublin piggybacked off the back of that, and the TV coverage to get big houses in Croke Park. And then RT come in and goes, oh, this is good now, we'll have this, thanks very much. Like, that's not really how public service broadcasting is supposed to work. These other organisations had invested money and built it up, and ideally the money that is being spent on those could be spent on other stuff.
Declan Bennett will make the point that he kind of pithily summed up his job with that interview with Johnny and Dan. Said his job is to put the best of Irish sport on television. You can interpret that in different ways, but there clearly must be a commercial ask. I mean, like, they would presumably put on the National League because that's a way of putting good sport on RTE, which isn't just a sports broadcaster. We kind of sometimes lose sight of that in these debates, but put that on TV. Okay, you're shaking your head, so you're going to disagree with me, but that'll get good ratings, whereas, you have to. It seems like you have to get good ratings to stay on RT in a primetime slot, which I think is fair enough, to be quite honest.
And maybe that's the whole point, and you said to it earlier on.
Whereas the Champions League will, and the League of Ireland won't.
Yeah, like they're not doing a great job of making money.
If you build it, they will come. No, we can't build it. We're going to put a game on once every 3 or 4 weeks. You never know when it's going to be. Who are the presenters? Like, what's the architecture around it? Who are the players that we've built up and followed week in, week out? That doesn't happen. Doesn't exist. It's kind of the League of Ireland's kind of a non-entity because of, I would argue, the approach towards it isn't that this is consistent. The league is on every Saturday night for 8 weeks. We know it's going to be on, and somebody else has already proven it. By the way, like Ayr and Setanta and TG Carr proved that was something good. So look, I don't know. Maybe TG Carr can save the league.
I always thought they'd be a good partner for the League of Ireland. There's a kind of like slightly punky, subversive element to both. I think that might be a good marriage.
Right. Mic up to League of Ireland's referees, and away you go on TG Carr.
You're not showing that at 7:45 on a Friday. Oh. Like, that is well after the watershed, I'm afraid.
Everybody's tuning in, though.
Yeah.
Gavin, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much.
8:14 this morning. Ahead of our